马达，送我回家吧。
The film opens with first-person point-of-view shots along Suzhou River. We hear an unnamed narrator telling us that sometimes he likes to drift down the river all day, going through Shanghai from east to west. This is Shanghai at the turn of the millennium. The city is transforming, and there are construction projects going on everywhere. Suzhou River is still a busy transport route, full of boats carrying goods. The narrator tells us that we can see everything on the river: ordinary people's lives, family, friends, and loneliness. He says that he could tell us a story about a mermaid sitting on a rock, stroking her golden hair, but it would be a lie. The film cuts to a shot of someone spray painting an advert on a wall, and we learn that the narrator is a videographer. He's invited to a bar to talk about a job with the boss, who wants him to film a mermaid show. The mermaid is a girl called Mei, and the narrator instantly falls for her. They begin dating, and we follow them through the beginning of their relationship. The narrator says that he never knew anything about her past. He just enjoyed looking at her. He says that when she got drunk, she'd often ask him if she went away and never came back, would he keep looking for her, like Madar? He asked her who Madar was, and she told him that he was a man who spent his whole life looking for a girl that he loved and lost. The narrator then begins to tell the story of Madar. Madar was a motorbike courier who stood out from other motorbike couriers because of his good looks. One day he gets a different kind of job, to take a schoolgirl to her aunt's while her dad has prostitutes over to his apartment. The girl, Mudan, is played by the same actress who plays Mei, but in many ways she is her opposite. She is naive, innocent and childlike. Soon Mudan becomes infatuated with Madar, and he likewise falls for her. On her birthday he buys her a mermaid doll, and she steals a bottle of her father's bison grass vodka for the two of them to share. They fall in love and spend the night at Madar's house. The narrator then tells us that Madar isn't just a courier, he has some criminal connections. We see Madar discussing a deal with other people. After that he begins to ignore Mudan, until one day she turns up at his house soaking wet from the rain. In the next scene we learn that there is a plan for him to kidnap Mudan and hold her for ransom. Madar is clearly uncomfortable with the plan, but decides to go through with it. Madar picks up Mudan and gets her very drunk. He then takes her to an abandoned building. At first, she doesn't understand what is going on. However, after Madar refuses to kiss her and throws her onto a couch, she realizes that something is not right. When she is later given a phone and told to sing to her father, and then Madar tells her father to do as the others say and she will not be hurt, she understands what is happening. Mudan's father pays the money, and the next morning they leave the building. Mudan asks Madar how much they got for her, and when he tells her, she becomes very angry and runs away.
你让我爸出多少钱换我
45万。
45万，可真便宜。
说什么？
我真便宜！
哎，你哪儿？
Madar chases her to a bridge, and when she eventually jumps in, he tries to save her, but fails. After spending a few years in prison, Madar eventually returns to Shanghai and becomes a courier again in order to be able to look for Mudan. By chance, he goes to the bar where Mei performs and bumps into her. He thinks she is Mudan and offers to buy her a drink, but she disappears. He goes to the bar again in the evening and enters her changing room to confront her. She calls the guards and gets him to leave. Madar follows Mei to her boathouse and tries to tell her that she is Mudan, but she says he is wrong and tells him to leave. Mei visits the narrator's home and speaks to him while Madar watches. The narrator confronts Madar, telling him that Mei is not Mudan, but is in fact his girlfriend. Madar agrees to leave, but actually continues to see Mei and talks to her about Mudan. Eventually they get together, and Mei finds it romantic that Madar thinks that she is the girl he is looking for. Mei breaks up with the narrator, and later the narrator has Madar beaten up. Mei starts to dress and act like Mudan. But Madar is not satisfied and tells the narrator that he will leave her and continue to search for Mudan. He quickly finds her, working in a 24-hour convenience store where he goes to buy some vodka. Madar and Mudan sit looking out across Suzhou River, and Mudan asks him to take her home. In the next scene, the police knock at the narrator's door and ask him to identify two bodies. He finds out that the bodies are Mada and Mudan, but we're not told how they died, only that they were drunk on bison grass vodka. Mei Mei comes to see the bodies and is surprised and saddened to hear that Mada's story was real and that he had not been making it up just to get her. The narrator and Mei Mei get back together, but when he goes to her boathouse the next day, she is gone. He considers going to search for her, but instead he decides to drink and close his eyes and wait for the next story to begin. There are many things that I really like about this film. I think that Zhou Xun was the perfect choice to play Mei Mei and Mudan. While she is obviously beautiful, she doesn't have the stereotypical beauty of a movie star. Her less typical beauty makes her more believable when playing characters who are supposed to be, in some sense, ordinary. They are the kind of people that you could see walking around Shanghai. She also does an incredible job of switching between the two roles. When she is Mudan, it is almost impossible not to believe that she really is a naive, innocent high school girl. Yet in the next scene, she is equally as believable as a streetwise bar performer. She gives a brilliant performance throughout, particularly in scenes requiring her to show strong emotion. Besides Zhou Xun's performance, one of my favourite things about the film is the cinematography. The use of handheld cameras and point-of-view filming is done very well. It puts us right in the story and straight away gives us a connection to the narrator. The choice to shoot exclusively in the more run-down parts of the city gives the film a gritty, realistic look, which contrasts and complements the rather dreamlike way in which the story is told. Another thing that I really like about the film is how tight it is. Most modern films are very long, around 2 hours at the minimum, and many are upwards of 3 hours long. Of course, some films need to be that length to tell the story well, but for many others they seem unnecessarily long. Suzhou River has a runtime of just 1 hour and 20 minutes, but it doesn't feel rushed at all. It moves along at a comfortable pace and gives the viewer all the information they need. I think that this is an example of great storytelling that modern filmmakers could learn from. One interesting thing to consider about the film is the reliability of the narrator. Throughout the film, he gives us reason to believe that the story may not be real, or at least not entirely real. Of course, the film is a work of fiction, but the question is what the narrator is saying true for the characters, including himself, or is he making it up? Ostensibly, these events happened and involved him, but there is another way to view it. Could it be that he just made up the whole thing while floating on a boat down Suzhou River, daydreaming interesting stories to kill time? This would help to explain the sudden and unexplained death of Mudan and Mada. Perhaps he just couldn't think of how to end the story. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't alter one's enjoyment or the overall ideas of the film, but it is interesting to consider. If I had to find a criticism of the film, it would be that the relationship between Mudan and Mada is not explored enough. The audience never learns why they are so in love. Besides the fact that they are both attractive and like riding motorbikes, it is not clear why they got together. It is possible to imagine that it was simply lust and that Mada's never-ending search for Mudan is driven not by love, but by a sense of guilt for what he did. But that would be quite a cynical interpretation. And although we do not see how the love between Mudan and Mada developed, we can imagine it. Another criticism would be that, as a character, Mudan does not seem as three-dimensional as Mei Mei. Mei Mei seems real, whereas at times Mudan seems more like a simulacrum of a young, innocent girl than an actual young, innocent girl. For example, although we are never told how old she is, it seems reasonable to assume she is a teenager, perhaps 17 or 18 years old, and is mature enough to get into a relationship with Mada. Yet we see her playing with a mermaid doll, as if she is a very young child. Whilst this is likely done to emphasise her innocence and contrast her personality with that of Mei Mei, it seems somewhat unrealistic, and it would have been more believable if it had been done more subtly. These are small criticisms, however, and overall the film is brilliant. It manages to be at once romantic and pessimistic, realistic and yet dreamlike. Zhou Xun gives a brilliant performance, and the gritty cinematography will stick in your mind. And at just 1 hour and 20 minutes, it's one of the most concise works of high-quality cinema that I can think of.